Sorry, would you mind taking the next one? It'll be here in a few seconds.
Is there a reason I can't ride this one?
I just prefer the space to myself. It's been a long morning.
Right, but this is a public elevator.
I know. I'm asking for a little consideration.
Is the consideration because I'm black?
Annabelle Crona believed the elevator was her own private space. When she noticed Henderson Sterling waiting to get on, she didn't see the building's owner. She saw a black man she didn't want beside her. She stepped in front of him, ignored him, and slammed the door on him. She had no idea that the man she just disrespected held the lease to her company's office, or that she was about to enter a meeting that could ruin her career. What you just witnessed was racism disguised as personal preference. A woman refusing to share a public elevator simply because of a man's skin color. You saw the moment of confrontation. Now we're going to share the full story, take you inside that building from the moment they both arrived that morning, and show the exact moment the elevator doors opened again. That's when Annabelle realized she had just made the most costly mistake of her life. If you think respect should be standard, not something you give based on skin color, hit that subscribe button now, because what happened next is a clear lesson in how fast bias can ruin everything you've built. Let's go back to 9:00 a.m. on that Tuesday in downtown Chicago. Sterling Tower soars 47 floors above Michigan Avenue. All glass, steel, and bold design. It's the kind of building that makes a statement, announcing its presence in the skyline with authority. Even the name leaves no doubt. The Sterling Tower. Henderson Sterling wanted everyone to know who built it, who owned it, and who transformed an empty lot in a struggling neighborhood into the city's most prestigious office address. Henderson Sterling is 45, and he earned every inch of that building. He started with nothing, worked construction jobs to pay for community college, then business school, then his first property purchase, then a second, and finally a third that gave him the leverage to dream even bigger. Sterling Tower opened 6 years ago and now hosts 12 major companies, 3 law firms, 2 tech startups, and a private equity firm that manages more money than some small nations. Henderson didn't inherit this. He didn't stumble into it. He built it with his own vision and hard work. Every morning he arrives at the building at 8:45. He doesn't have to. He could work from home, leave daily operations to his management team, or spend his days on a yacht in the sun. But Henderson loves this building the way some people love their children. He parks in the underground garage, takes the private elevator up to the lobby, and spends 15 minutes walking the marble floors, making sure everything is just right. He greets Marcus, the doorman, asking about his daughter's college plans. He nods to Teresa at the security desk and compliments her new glasses. He stops at the coffee cart in the atrium to chat with Paulo about the Bulls game. Everyone knows Henderson. Everyone respects him because he treats the people who work in his building like real people, whether they own a company or push a mail cart. On this Tuesday, Henderson is wearing a charcoal gray Tom Ford suit, a crisp white shirt with French cuffs, and a burgundy tie worth more than most people's car payments. His shoes gleam like mirrors. He looks exactly like what he is, a man meant for the executive suite, someone who commands attention just by entering a room. He's on his way to the 42nd floor for a meeting that has been on his calendar for weeks. Hartwell & Klein Consulting, one of his biggest tenants, is up for lease renewal. They occupy 3 full floors, 30,000 square feet of prime office space. The lease is worth millions. Henderson's property manager has been handling the negotiations, but today's meeting is the final step, the handshake, the personal connection that seals the deal. Henderson takes pride in knowing his tenants, in keeping relationships that go beyond just business. He doesn't simply collect rent, he builds real partnerships. At exactly 9:00, Henderson walks across the lobby toward the elevators. He's reviewing notes on his phone, mentally going over the meeting agenda. The central elevator opens with a soft chime and Henderson looks up, ready to step inside. That's when he notices Annabelle Crona. Annabelle Crona is 43 and a mid-level executive at Hartwell & Klein. Her official title is Senior Vice President of Client Relations, which sounds impressive until you realize there are 11 other senior vice presidents at the firm. And client relations really means attending fancy lunches and making sure clients don't jump to a competitor. Annabelle has worked at Hartwell & Klein for 9 years, long enough to feel like she owns a space she doesn't, long enough to develop the kind of territorial arrogance that comes from working in a prestigious building and forgetting she's just a tenant. She arrived at work this morning already frazzled. Her morning had been a mess. Traffic on the Kennedy was backed up and her latte was wrong. Her assistant had called in sick. Now she was running late for the lease renewal meeting, the one where the partners would meet the building owner, the one where she was supposed to present the proposal to expand to a 4th floor. She needed this meeting to go perfectly. She needed to impress. She had been passed over for promotion twice and was all too aware of the whispers in the hallways suggesting she had plateaued, that she had reached her ceiling. This meeting was her chance to prove she still mattered. When Annabelle stepped into the elevator just 30 seconds earlier, she was alone and she liked it that way. The Sterling Tower elevator is spacious, mirrored on 3 sides with soft lighting and a digital display showing the floors. Annabelle stood in the center, checking her reflection, smoothing her blazer, rehearsing her opening remarks. She pressed the button for the 42nd floor. The doors began to close, then they opened again. The security camera in the top corner of the elevator recorded everything that followed. The angle is high and slightly tilted, capturing the entire elevator and a small view of the lobby beyond the open doors. Annabelle stands in the center of the frame, her back slightly turned to the camera, her posture stiff. The elevator doors slide open, and Henderson Sterling comes into view, walking toward the elevator with the calm confidence of a man who knows he belongs there. He's looking at his phone, not yet meeting anyone's eyes. He's 2 steps from stepping inside. When Annabelle moves, she doesn't step back, she steps forward. She raises her right hand, palm out, a stopping gesture that is polite enough to deny rudeness but sharp enough to make her point clear. Henderson halts, looks up from his phone and meets her gaze. A brief flicker of confusion crosses his face, a micro-expression, the natural reaction of someone being told they can't do something they assumed they could. "Sorry, would you mind taking the next one?" Annabelle speaks. Her voice is light, almost apologetic, the kind of tone someone uses when making a reasonable request. "It'll be here in a few seconds." Henderson's confusion grows. He glances at the elevator, empty except for Annabelle, then back at her, trying to figure out if this is a joke or if he's missing some explanation. Is there a reason I can't ride this one?" Annabelle doesn't pause. She's committed now, delivering the line with the casual entitlement of someone who's never been told no. "I just prefer the space to myself. It's been a long morning." The security camera captures Henderson's face perfectly in this moment. His expression changes from confusion to something harder, not quite anger but close. His jaw tightens. He takes a steady breath. When he speaks, his voice is calm, measured, controlled, the voice of a man who has had versions of this conversation too many times in his life. Yet this is a public elevator. Annabelle shifts her weight and it shows in her body language. Her shoulders square, her chin tilts slightly. She's not stepping back. In her mind, she's being completely reasonable. She asked politely, explained herself. Why is he being difficult? "I know," she says, and now there's a hint of impatience creeping into her voice, the impatience of someone who feels their time is being wasted. "I'm just asking for a little consideration." Henderson stares at her. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds of silence where everything hangs in the balance, where he decides whether to respond, to push back, or to walk away. He decides to push back because he's tired of stepping aside, because he owns this building and he will not be told he can't ride his own elevator, and he knows exactly what's happening even if Annabelle refuses to admit it. His voice is quiet, almost gentle, giving her a chance to face the truth. "Is the consideration because I'm black?" The silence that follows is heavy. The security camera doesn't capture sound perfectly, but it captures body language, and Annabelle's tells the whole story. She doesn't deny it, she doesn't gasp or act shocked. She doesn't stumble over an excuse about needing personal space no matter who's getting on. She just stands frozen for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then her right hand moves. She reaches for the control panel on the elevator wall. Her finger finds the button marked with 2 arrows pointing toward each other. The closed door button. She presses it once, then twice, then a third time. Rapid fire, as if trying to erase what just happened, trying to make this moment disappear as fast as possible. The elevator doors slide shut. Henderson Sterling stays in the lobby watching his own reflection vanish. As the polished steel doors seal, the digital display above the elevator starts counting up 2, 3, 4. Henderson doesn't move. He lingers for a moment, processing what just happened, running through his options. He could call security, he could report her, he could make a scene. But Henderson Sterling didn't get to where he is by making scenes. He got there by being strategic, by letting people reveal themselves, and by keeping his composure while others lose theirs. He turns to the left, walks to the next elevator in the bank, and presses the call button. The elevator arrives in 12 seconds. Henderson steps inside alone and presses the button for the 42nd floor. As the elevator rises, he allows himself a small, grim smile because Henderson Sterling knows something Annabelle Crona does yet. He knows where she works, he knows where she's going, and he knows exactly which meeting is about to start. Annabelle Crona steps onto the 42nd floor feeling flustered but triumphant. She got her space. She got her moment of peace. Sure, there was that awkward encounter, but she pushes it out of her mind the way she always does, reframing it as a reasonable request complicated by someone being oversensitive. She steps out of the elevator, smooths her blazer one last time, and walks down the hallway toward the conference room. The glass door is already closed, which means the meeting has started, which means she's late. She mutters a curse under her breath and opens the door as quietly as she can. The conference room is a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. The table is a massive walnut slab surrounded by leather chairs. 3 people are already seated. Richard Hartwell, the managing partner of Hartwell & Klein, sits at the head of the table in his signature navy suit. Christine Valdez, the CFO, sits to Richard's right with a stack of lease documents in front of her. To his left, with his back to the door, is a man in a charcoal gray suit. Annabelle can't see his face yet. She assumes it's Gerald from legal or maybe David from operations. She slips into the room, murmurs an apology for being late, and takes the empty seat across from the man in gray. Richard Hartwell looks up, his expression somewhere between relief and concern. "Annabelle, you're just in time," he says, and there's something in his voice she can't quite read. and a tension that shouldn't be there for a routine lease meeting. "I'd like you to meet our landlord and the owner of this building, Mr. Henderson Sterling." The man in the charcoal gray suit turns in his chair. His eyes lock onto Annabelle and she feels the blood drain from her face. Henderson Sterling looks at her with an expression carved from marble. There's no anger, no gloating, no satisfaction, just a calm, steady gaze that sees everything and judges accordingly. He lets the silence stretch for 3 seconds, long enough for Annabelle to realize her entire world is about to shift. Then he speaks, his voice steady, perfectly professional. "We've met," Henderson says downstairs. Richard Hartwell's head swivels from Henderson to Annabelle, confusion written across his face. "I'm sorry." Henderson leans back slightly, still looking at Annabelle. "I tried to board the elevator with Miss Crona a few minutes ago. She told me she preferred the space to herself. She closed the doors in my face." Christine Valdez's pen stops moving. Richard's jaw tight. Annabelle opens her mouth to explain, to defend herself, to spin this into something acceptable, but no words come. What could she possibly say? That she needed personal space, that it was a long morning, that it had nothing to do with race, even though Henderson asked her directly and she slammed the door. Henderson continues, his voice sharpening now, cutting through the polite veneer. "I'm going to be honest with you, Richard. That interaction makes me question the culture of this company. It makes me wonder if Hartwell and Klein share the values I expect from tenants in my building. Values like respect, inclusion, and treating every person with basic human dignity no matter how they look. Richard Hartwell is many things, but stupid isn't one of them. He built his consulting firm from scratch, grew it into a $50 million operation, and he didn't do that by ignoring power dynamics. He knows exactly what's happening in this room. He understands that Henderson Sterling doesn't need to say, 'I'm reconsidering your lease.' The message is already hanging in the air, sharp and unavoidable like a guillotine blade. Richard also knows that relocating 3 floors of office space in downtown Chicago would cost his firm a fortune, disrupt operations for months, and raise serious questions among the partners about his leadership. He cannot afford to lose this lease, which means he cannot afford to keep Annabelle Crona. Richard stands up, and when he speaks, his voice is ice cold. "Mr. Sterling, I apologize on behalf of Hartwell and Klein. What happened is completely unacceptable and does not reflect the values of this firm." He turns to Annabelle, still frozen in her chair, her face pale, hands gripping the armrests. "Annabelle, you need to leave this meeting immediately and go directly to HR." Annabelle finds her voice, but it comes out strangled, desperate. "Richard, I can explain." "Leave now." Annabelle stands on shaky legs. She glances at Henderson one last time, searching for mercy, for understanding, for any sign that this could be fixed. Henderson meets her gaze with the same calm, neutral expression. He doesn't need to say a word, he's already made his point. Annabelle walks to the door, opens it, and steps into the hallway. The door closes behind her with a soft click that sounds like the period at the end of a sentence. Inside the conference room, Richard Hartwell sits back down and exhales. "Mr. Sterling, I want to assure you that this incident will be thoroughly investigated and addressed. That behavior has no place in our organization." Henderson nods slowly. "I appreciate that, Richard, I really do, but words are easy, I need to see action." "You will," Richard promises. "I'll handle this personally." The meeting continues for another 40 minutes. They discuss lease terms, the proposed expansion to a 4th floor, and rent adjustments tied to market rates. Henderson remains professional, but there's a coolness that wasn't there before, a reserve that makes Richard work harder to close the deal. By the time they shake hands and agree to the renewal, Richard knows he got lucky. He knows that if Henderson Sterling wanted to, he could have ended the lease and made Hartwell and Klein's life a logistical nightmare. The fact that Henderson is willing to continue the relationship is a gift, and Richard is not going to waste it. Annabelle Crona sits in the waiting area outside HR for 20 minutes before anyone calls her in. When she's finally called, the Director of Human Resources already has her file open on the screen. The meeting lasts 12 minutes. Annabelle is informed that her actions violate the company's code of conduct, specifically the sections on discrimination and professional behavior. She's told that Hartwell and Klein has a zero-tolerance policy for racism in any form, and refusing to share an elevator with someone based on race absolutely qualifies. She's informed that beyond the moral issue, her actions jeopardized a multi-million-dollar lease and put the firm's reputation at risk. She's given 30 minutes to pack her desk, and her access badge is deactivated before she leaves the HR office. Security escorts her to her desk, watches as she packs a cardboard box with picture frames and coffee mugs, and then escorts her to the elevator. The same elevator, the same doors that had closed in Henderson Sterling's face, now close behind Annabelle Crona as she rides down to the lobby for the last time as an employee of Hartwell and Klein Consulting. 3 weeks later, the lease renewal is finalized. Henderson Sterling signs the documents in his office on the 47th floor, the penthouse he reserved for himself when he designed the building. The office is all glass, filled with modern art with views that stretch to the horizon in 3 directions. After his property manager leaves with the signed contracts, Henderson stands at the window looking down at the city below. The cars on Michigan Avenue look like toys. The people on the sidewalks are barely visible. From up here, everyone looks small. Henderson thinks about Annabelle Crona, sometimes but not often. She doesn't deserve that much space in his mind. But occasionally when he's alone in the elevator, he remembers that moment in the lobby. He remembers her hand raised to stop him. He remembers the door closing in his face. And he remembers the look on her face when she realized who he was, when the elevator doors in her mind opened and she finally saw him clearly. Henderson doesn't take pleasure in her firing. He isn't vindictive, but he believes in consequences. He believes actions have costs and people who treat others with contempt should pay those costs. The lease Henderson signed includes a new clause not in the original agreement. It requires Hartwell and Klein to implement quarterly diversity and inclusion training for all staff. It requires them to submit annual reports on their efforts to create an equitable workplace. And it includes a provision allowing Henderson to terminate the lease if credible complaints of discrimination are filed against the firm. Richard Hartwell agreed to every word without negotiation. He understood the message. This is Henderson Sterling's building. These are Henderson Sterling's rules, and if you want to work here you will treat everyone who walks through these doors with respect. Henderson turns from the window and walks back to his desk. He has another meeting in 20 minutes, a conference call with architects about a new property in Detroit. Sterling Tower was just the beginning. Henderson has plans for 6 more buildings across the Midwest, each one a monument to what's possible when you refuse to accept the limits others try to place on you. Each one a statement that success isn't reserved for people who look a certain way or come from certain families. Each one is proof that Henderson Sterling belongs in every elevator, every boardroom, every conversation about who gets to own the skyline. The story of that Tuesday morning spreads through Sterling Tower fast. Marcus the doorman tells Teresa at the security desk. Teresa tells Paulo at the coffee cart. Paulo tells the office managers who stopped by for their morning espresso. Within a week, everyone in the building knows the story of the woman who refused to share an elevator with the owner. It becomes legend, a cautionary tale, something people whisper about when someone acts entitled, when someone forgets that courtesy costs nothing but cruelty costs everything. Annabelle Crona's LinkedIn profile still says she's seeking new opportunities in client relations. Her recommendations are generic, carefully worded. When recruiters call her former colleagues at Hartwell and Klein for references, they get polite, non-committal answers. She learns what everyone eventually learns: reputation follows you. Actions echo. The professional world is smaller than you think. The person you insult today may hold your future tomorrow. Henderson Sterling never had to say a word, announce who he was, pull rank, or threaten her. He simply stood in his lobby, tried to ride his elevator, and let Annabelle Crona reveal exactly who she was. Then he let the consequences unfold naturally, the way they do when your career is built on arrogance and your comfort on exclusion. The elevator doors closed, the elevator doors opened, and when they opened again the world had changed. This is the lesson Henderson learned decades ago, the lesson he carries every day. You never know who you're talking to, whose building you're in, whose company you're negotiating with, or whose respect you will need someday. So you treat everyone with dignity, not because they've earned it, not because they look like they belong, but because dignity is the baseline, the absolute minimum standard for human interaction. Anything less is a gamble. Annabelle Crona lost that gamble the moment she raised her hand and decided Henderson Sterling wasn't worthy of sharing 12 square feet of elevator space. Sterling Tower still rises 47 stories above Michigan Avenue. The elevators still run every day, carrying hundreds of people between the lobby and the sky. Henderson Sterling still arrives at 8:45 every morning, still walks the marble floors, still greets Marcus, Teresa, and Paulo by name. He still treats the people in his building like human beings because he knows something Annabelle Crona learned too late. Respect isn't about position, power, or who owns the building. It's about recognizing the humanity in every person who crosses your path, even in an elevator, especially in an elevator. Because you never know when those doors will open again and you'll find yourself face to face with the person you dismissed. By then, it's already too late to take it back. If this story teaches anything, let it be this: the way you treat people when you think it doesn't matter is exactly when it matters most. Your character isn't revealed in boardrooms or big moments. It's revealed in elevators, hallways, and parking lots. In the small interactions you think no one is watching, in the split-second decisions you make about who deserves your courtesy. Annabelle Crona thought she was claiming personal space. She was actually ending her career. She thought she was dealing with someone insignificant. She was actually insulting the man who owned the ground beneath her feet. And the security camera captured every second, every gesture, every word. These moments don't disappear. They're recorded. They're remembered. They have consequences. Henderson Sterling owns the building, but the lesson belongs to all of us.